So, how would you describe your early child life?
My early child life was pretty nice. My parents did a lot of arguing, we can complain about that all day, but I'm sure everybody else did too. But I grew up in northeast Connecticut, in a pretty rural area. Everybody on my street, my part of my street, was in my family. So I had cousins and aunts and uncles down the street. And my little brother, who's a year younger than me, and I would just take off into the woods and play all day until we were old enough to go to school. Um, School was pretty harsh. I was a big dork. People picked on me a lot. People younger than me would pick on me. I was a bookworm, dorky nature girl, and nobody really got that. I didn't have like the newest Barrett clip, and I didn't know who the Simpsons were, so that was like an immediate out. I couldn't, dance to all the hot 80s music that was going on now, which I'm proud of at this point, but I used to cry about when I was a little girl. So I went to Catholic school. There were nuns. Some of the nuns were mean, some of the nuns were nice, but I got really good grades, which didn't make me any more popular.
Do you think your kind of like different kind of settings and like beliefs and kind of like outlook, did that ever change, or do you think that's always been with you? Or
I think it stuck with me, but it started to get cooler as I got older. It was like I did all this nature, crazy hippie stuff before it was cool to anybody else. So then when I started hanging out with people that were also really into hiking and nature and, tree hugging, I was able to fit right in there. So and as I got older and developed into a woman, I became more popular because guys were attracted to me. So that kind of helped me to fit in. But with my prior experience, knowing that the same guys that are now hitting on me used to make fun of me and pull my pigtails, I was just like, go away, I'm reading my book. So, I think it made me a stronger person, and I don't think I've compromised too much of who I originally was.
do you think how did you like started getting into nature and like how you getting? Is there like was this like an early childhood thing or was
Yeah.
it?
It was the only thing to do. We weren't allowed to watch much TV. We weren't allowed to have like crazy fancy toys or video games. The only thing to do was go outside and play, and there was just, this whole fascinating world of insects and plants and trees to climb and forts to build. And, there was a pond in my backyard. I was really, fortunate to grow up in such a natural environment. But that was the only thing to do, really. It was ride your bike, hike around, throw pine cones at each other, and that's basically what got me into it. It was my surroundings.
So do you think it's because you got in your surroundings because today there's a lot of technological advances. A lot of kids are just going inside playing video games on the computer.
Yeah, they're in their rooms all day.
Yeah.
Make noise.
So, I was just wondering. Oh, hold on. Where? Oh, there we go. You can. Yeah. So I was wondering why it wasn't. Do you think it's because life in the 80s, like, it was more about being outside, or was it because, like, your parents kind of were strict and they wanted you to, like...
Yeah, I think there was less technology. Kids, parents weren't so concerned about safety and hand sanitizer, and, I lived in a rural area, though, so you didn't have to worry about, creeps rolling up on you and putting you in their van. You could pretty much, I had no supervision all day long when I was home. None whatsoever. I would just leave and they would yell for us to come in for dinner, after school, and we'd just go and come back when we were hungry. Now, parents are a lot more on top of their kids. There's more things to worry about. You've got, the hole in the ozone layer, so you're getting slathered with sunscreen before you go outside. You've got, germs and disease. You're getting, cleaned up and micromanaged. So that was a lot different, as far as the 80s versus today or even the 90s. But, I think living in a rural area and having parents that wouldn't allow me to sit in front of the TV all day also influenced, me I mean, I don't even own a TV now, whereas before I was just like, crying because I couldn't watch TV.
How would you like what were could you name any like really prevalent memories of your early like childhood life?
My grandmother, she died when I was 6, so I've really tried to hold on to all those memories that I had of her. She had a big, beautiful Victorian house on a farm, and she would babysit me. I can even remember, like, from very early childhood, playing with the buttons on her sweater. Everything she did, like, seemed so cool. She was so buoyant and happy and laughed a lot. And especially one thing that is like really a clear memory is she had these windows where the glass was beveled and the sunlight would come in and I could catch rainbows that were made by the sunlight in my hand, and that was just like something that always really stuck with me. But I remember my dad yelling a lot. I remember when my brother was born, when my sister was born, when my other sister was born, and those really stuck out because it was, like, here's a new person. And getting picked on in school, really vivid memories of that.
Do you believe your family, and I know you have a big family, you have a lot of siblings, have they influenced you in ways or molded you in the person you are today, and why?
Well, because I was kicked out of the house at 15, I didn't really get to spend, I spent a lot of my formative years with the kids. I'm the oldest, so I did a lot of taking care of them, so I think that helped me to get a more nurturing personality because I was generally, my parents didn't have a lot of time and I was the oldest and most responsible, so, it definitely helped me learn how to cook and how to take care of people. So in that way they shaped me, but I think later on in life, the absence of them really made me an emotionally needy person. Like, I became very attached to my friends, very attached to, guys that I dated. Because I missed them so much, I wanted to care for the people around me.
So, I would you say like your family was kind of like dysfunctional? Like, they kind of had like a lot going on, but like I'm trying to think of the way I can like is there a family memory that when you're in your early childhood that you can remember that really whether you either felt really scared or emotional or
Yeah. I used to stay up and listen to my parents fight at night. My dad had a drinking problem. My mom was kind of a codependent, and she was also a workaholic. She was the one with the high-paying job. She was the one that was maintaining the family's finances. She was like the brains of the business. And my dad would come home drunk, and they would fight. That really frightened me. I didn't really know what was going on, but I knew that they were very angry at each other, and they're very angry at us a lot of the time because we were the source of whatever difficulties we were having. My mom would be free to go on her merry way if she didn't have 4 kids with him, and he felt like probably the drinking, if he had more opportunities. He's always talking about how he's been screwed over in life and not so many opportunities. He's not drinking anymore, and they're still together, and they raised all of us up. So, in some ways it was a success, but it was pretty traumatizing when I was a kid. It felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't make it better. No matter how good my grades were, they weren't going to be happy. There was always something wrong.
Do you think your parents' relationship like kind of affects you when you're older, when you're looking for a relationship? Are there things you saw in your parents' relationship that kind of affect your mindset of what a relationship should be or what you want in a relationship?
Yeah, I think seeing what they went through has led me to reject guys a lot. I have this attitude where if things aren't going the way that I like them to, I'll give them a first chance, a second chance, a third chance. But if they can't change something that I think is really wrong and something that I can put up with, I have no problem walking away from the relationship. So it's kept me single, and I've never been married. 30 years old. I'm pretty picky, and it's not because I think I'm a diva or anything like that. It's because I want happiness, which I don't know.
Hmm. What was really important for you in these years? I know you mentioned grades and
Grades. I liked horses. I liked to be outside. Nature was very important. I mean, I wanted a group of friends really more than anything. I felt really, really lonely when I was young. It was really hard for me to make good friends. I had a couple of really good friends, but they were kind of like the popular people that would hang out with me because they felt bad that everybody else was picking on me. So, and they were truly like nice people, like valedictorian sort of um, you know, very tolerant, nice, kind people to say wonderful things to me. So, that helped a little bit, but I was like an incredibly lonely person when I was a kid.
do you have relationships that formed from your early childhood that are still like really important, that you still have like an important bond with that person today?
I'm not, because of Facebook, you can stay in touch with a
Yeah.
lot of people, but out of, my best friend from kindergarten, I talked to her on Facebook, but, I wouldn't call her if something really awesome happened to me, or, same with her. Most of my really important, close bonds that I formed were after my parents kicked me out of the house, because those people that were still there for me, even though, I had no clothes, I had nothing, and they stuck by me, and, would sit with me and let me cry, and they had problems of their own, and the mutual help that we gave to each other, even if it was just emotional, kind of tied us together for life.
So I don't know whether you're comfortable about talking about why your parents kicked you out of your house, but in the dominant impression, I kind of wanted to include like the way, like why you are the way you are today, and I feel like that's like a significant like event in your life, and that really molded you into who you are. So did you want to talk about it, or?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I can get into it. Well, basically, I was brought up Roman Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. At an early age, I started having some issues with religion. I saw a lot of people in my community that claimed to be such good people. They'd show up to church every Sunday. They'd give lots of money to the church. But then they'd go out and proceed to screw other people over. So even at a very early age, I realized religion is like some kind of, really fake thing. So I really lost my faith in religion, and I started kind of inventing my own philosophy about what is good and what is bad. That didn't go over well with my parents, especially later on in life when they told me that it was time for me to get my confirmation. That was like, at that point, I think that was the biggest rift. I mean, prior to that, they would always complain about my grades, even if I was a straight A student. They would keep me up for hours redoing something that they thought was wrong with what I was working on. They really, really micromanaged me, and they yelled at me a lot. I mean, the verbal abuse was very intense. The alcoholism with my dad, just made it worse with the yelling. I mean, I think that was the main problem with his alcoholism. And I mean, I went through a very crazy period of life. I mean, I became an alcoholic at a very early age, especially after they threw me out because, there was so much pain that I had. But the fact that I originally didn't want to get my confirmation and skip my confirmation classes really made them mad at me. And then they forced me to go to confirmation classes. I did make my confirmation. They basically stood outside the door of the class to make sure that I stayed there the entire time on Sundays. Got my confirmation, but they still, they knew that they had forced me to do it. And, my dad started getting really, like, angrier toward me because I started rebelling even more. One day, after school, he came home. He was drunk. He didn't want me inside the house. He wanted everybody to go outside, and I had an upset stomach. So I asked him if I could just stay inside, be very quiet, and lay down in a chair and rest. And he proceeded to tell me that he thought I was sick because I had AIDS. And I was a virgin at the time. I had never, I was just becoming interested in boys, talking on the phone with them, I had only gone on one date in my entire life, and to hear him say that just, like, completely tore me apart. So I ran out of the house, I slammed the door, and he followed me and beat the crap out of me. He was drunk. It was a very, very crazy afternoon. So I showed up to school the next day because I wasn't allowed to miss school, and one of the teachers saw me and was like, "What happened to you?" And I tried to lie and say that I had gotten beat up in the parking lot, but I had makeup all over my bruises. And she was like, "There's no way that happened this morning." So I finally broke down and told her that it was my dad. And as a result, my dad was arrested for hitting me. And my mom, my dad, my entire family, basically said that if he goes to jail because of this, we're going to disown you. So I ended up lying to the judge, saying that I had beat myself up for attention, which got the charges dropped, and then they kicked me out of the house.
Still?
They disowned me anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, it had to happen. One way or another, it had to happen.
Do you think the whole incident, it really kind of changed? Did you ever forgive your father for his alcoholic ways and the ways he kind of tore you down as a person when you were younger?
I forgive him now, but we've never been able to talk about it. We didn't talk for almost 15 years. And my parents were at a place where I was volunteering, and we ran into each other accidentally, and started talking again. He's changed. He's a diabetic now. He doesn't really drink alcohol. He's much older. He's, a lot more mellow. I think he feels bad, and not having me around for 15 years, I'm sure, was an incredible source of guilt for him. So I do forgive him, and we have a good relationship now. But, for a long time, I really didn't forgive him, and I really felt like, kind of like wondering if life is really worth it, if that's how parents treat their kids, and things like that. But, there were other people that I met in my life that really restored my faith in humankind. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. That was a very good explanation. Thank you. During your teenage years, you were disowned and you were on your own. Did you make any decisions that today you would consider as dangerous or irrational?
Yeah, a lot. You name it. I've done, I drank a lot. I drank so much that I gave myself a peptic ulcer at the age of 16. And then, the drinking definitely slowed down after that. I, have a fair amount of common sense, but it was really, I think, drinking was the result of depression, homelessness, and being very cold a lot of the time, and hungry. And, I think during that period of life, there were resources that I could have reached out to, but I didn't know what they were or how to find them. So I basically was, with a gang of kids that were also either homeless, disowned, or their parents didn't take care of them and they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. So, I would drink, I would party, we would drive recklessly, we would just do all sorts of crazy stuff. I remember one time I ran across the top railing of a railroad bridge that went over the street. It was probably, more than 50 feet in the air, just because I didn't care at all at that point in my life. I didn't, nobody was helping me. I didn't think I had a future, so I really didn't care. I wanted to be alive, but I didn't really know, what was next.
So were you still in the same town as your parents? Did your parents know what happened to you? Did they have any somewhat idea where you were or what you were doing?
Yeah, I lived in the same town. Sometimes I would actually see them driving by when I'd be walking somewhere. And I'd see them driving by, and a lot of my family lived in that same town. I'd see them. We just didn't really communicate at all.
Did you ever try to communicate with them, or did they ever try to communicate with you during that time period?
On the holidays, for the first 2 years, I would try to come around so that I could see the kids. But they wouldn't. They would, super hover over us. My baby sister, I missed her ridiculously a lot, and I just wanted to see her a couple times a year, but it was so awkward, and they would just really look at me like I was a crazy criminal person, so I just stopped after a while. I did reach out to them, but then I stopped because things were just really, really weird and very cold.
Do you think your relationship with your siblings was affected by the way your family kind of put you out?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't say that I'm close to any of them. I mean, I love them very much, like very deeply, but I think in my absence they really blame me for what happened. And part of me staying away was so that my parents' guilt would be enough that they would never treat the other kids that way. I felt like if they felt guilty about me continuously, then they wouldn't want for anything, and they wouldn't, be yelled at and hurt. My baby sister said that, my dad was kind of mean to her. She thinks it was because she looks the most like me. And I mean, we talk and everything. We still get together for holidays, and but I don't think they care about me as much. I mean, definitely not as much as if I had been able to be close to them. I'm working on that, definitely. I'm trying to, but I understand that somebody that you're close to, they're not there, but you have each other. You're gonna group together and try to stick together, and cauterize your heart because you don't want to feel pain because you miss somebody. But I was very, very close with them before I left.
Did your parents, do you think, treated your other siblings differently from you because of that guilt they had?
I think, yeah, definitely. I mean, they were pretty darn spoiled after I left. After I left, they got a swimming pool. They got all sorts of stuff. They could do whatever they want. My other siblings could drink and party as much as they wanted, and my parents would not really come down on them too much at all, because the moment they would start to, they would think about what happened with me, and they'd be like, well, and they grew up to be just fine.
But your parents were, you said a lot about Catholic school, and you were kind of like, you didn't really like that line of thinking they were trying to force on you. So you would say they were really religious, yet they permitted drinking and...
Yeah, well, they weren't really religious. They were really into keeping up appearances.
Like most of the people at the church, kind of.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Same ideal.
They wanted to keep their appearance up by me not getting confirmation. It's going to cause bip, bip, bip among the townsfolk, and, they don't want that. One thing that I heard over and over and over again before they kicked me out was, like, their family name. And honestly, while I was experimenting with life, I wasn't doing anything that, that was really wrong. But then that's just my opinion, which is different. Now, they're like, you weren't that bad. They can tell me now I wasn't that bad a kid. It's just I was the first. They saw the other kids do much crazier things than I would ever dream of doing, and they were okay with it, but I was the first one, so, they just weren't used to that. Now they joke around about, oh, my brother came home from college and he did that and this, and, they laugh about it, but, that's after I broke them in or something.
So, during the time period when you were on your own, how would you describe kind of like your hobbies, friends, and, high school during the teenage years when, things started to change and you're trying to really experiment with life and see what it was about?
Well, I dropped out of high school the day that they kicked me out because I didn't have any clothes to wear. So I was really ashamed of the fact that I was homeless, ashamed of the fact that I had nothing. I just never went back to school. That was the beginning of my junior year. And so I had to find a way to make a living. I would work under the table. I would, sell things and stuff like that. I mean, I was just basically scraping by, so a large amount of my time was spent working. Earlier on, I spent a lot of my excess income on alcohol, which wasn't a lot. My friends and I would, like, pool together, money to, get some adult to buy us alcohol. That was something. I played a lot of hacky sack. I still spent a lot of time in the woods, but it was more like a necessity because I, lived in the woods. I was really into music. I didn't play any instruments at that time. I started playing the guitar when I was about 22. I really didn't have anything we'd go over to my friend's house that had skipped school, and we would play video games and eat all the food in their parents' fridge. So it was, I mean, a lot of it was bumming around. We used to have this game that we'd play with the cops. We'd make them chase us. We'd go to the stationer, the Hallmark store, I guess it would be now, and they'd deliver the newspaper outside at like 3 in the morning, and we'd go each grab a newspaper and sit in a very visible place all reading the newspaper at 3 in the morning. The police would show up, and we'd start swearing at them. They'd get out of their cars, start running after us, and we'd make them chase us around all night, which they were bored. There was like no crime in our town at all, so like I guess they never caught us, and we never really did anything bad besides underage drinking, and so that was probably my major hobby from 15 to 17, making the cops chase me around.
How I'm just curious how you got involved with alcohol. Was it, I know because you're homeless, when did it first start? Was it because you saw like people, I know your dad was an alcoholic, so it was really interesting to me to see how you got involved. Yeah. And like I would think that because my parents like an alcoholic, I would probably want to stay away from it.
Yeah.
But
it's really not like that. It's almost like what do they call it? Survivor syndrome, where the person grows to appreciate their captor. It was kind of like that. It was like I had been around him being an alcoholic for so long that no longer was the problem to me. The alcohol wasn't the problem. It was his attitude. So I actually started drinking before I even left the house. He would stockpile alcohol in the basement to hide it from my mom, and then we were charged with by my mom to go find his alcohol in the basement and dispose of it by having hatchet throwing contests at cans of beer or just breaking bottles on a rock outside. I mean, polluting, broken glass, just not good. But that's what my brother and I would do. We'd shoot at the cans with BB guns, and we'd break the bottles outside and, get rid of his beer. And then he'd go out and get, like, a lot more and then hide it somewhere else in the basement until it was found. So after a while, when I got to be older, I started hanging out with people that drank, and I was like, why am I wasting all this alcohol? Why don't I bring it with me to the party and, be popular? So I started, instead of destroying his stash, stealing his stash and bringing it with me, and for a while, I don't think he ever caught on. Because, we'd been taking it since we were, like, old enough to throw a hatchet. So that started, but, I wouldn't say it got really ridiculous until I was homeless, and depressed, I think.
So you kind of turned towards it because...
Yeah, before it was a social activity, it wasn't, interfering with my life. But when I got depressed, when I thought I had no future, that's when I really was probably subconsciously out to completely destroy myself. I would drink until I threw up, and then I would start drinking again. It was, a very unhealthy, mentally unhealthy habit. But when I started seeing the physical results of that, that's when I was fortunately unable to stop on my own.
So when you realize, so that kind of, I'm getting that feeling that was kind of a low point for you. And I'm just curious, how did you kind of get back up from that?
Well, I had to. It was like, do or die. I had to support myself. I had to take care of myself. Nobody else was taking care of me. So, basically it was, get up, change your life, start getting up early in the morning instead of late, in the afternoon, change your life. I think I've got not a lot of willpower, but I'm a very stubborn person. So when I decide to do something, it's pretty easy for me to, set my own pace and make decisions. So I just kind of pulled myself up out of the hole I was in and started in a different direction. Which I think that was the lowest point in my life. I think really that was the darkest part of my life. After that, things they were still really difficult, but they started getting better and better, and as my self-confidence grew, I started rejecting unhealthy thoughts and unhealthy relationships, and I really think I started really taking care of myself more and more every year after that.
So during this time, would you say that your friends like were the people that you kind of that helped you, that were kind of like your support during this time period, and were able to like help you?
They, even though those are the people that some could say were a bad influence on me because they were co-participants in my former drinking habits and everything else. They never rejected me when I decided to change my lifestyle. They stuck with me. Some of them were inspired by me. Some of them just supported me. They just I was the same person. A lot of people say, well, misery loves company, and that can be true in some cases, but I think I was just fortunate to have good friends that were supportive of me no matter what I decided to do.
During our time together at YCL, you mentioned about traveling the country, and when you were homeless, and like I'm just curious, when did you first start to leave your town and kind of go to state?
I was 16, 17. I would get bored in my hometown and walk up to the on-ramp of the highway and stick out my thumb. I'm trying to think what inspired me to do that originally. I mean, there were other people in town that had talked about doing it. I had heard about like hippies and stuff like that from generations of yore, and their stories. I was a kind of a book reader. I had read The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, and that talks a lot about people just picking up and going to California and then getting on a bus and riding all over the country and doing basically whatever they wanted. And I figured that if I have all this freedom, I'm homeless, I don't have any obligations, I'm not going to school, all I have to do is make sure that I have food to eat and a park bench to sleep on. Why not get out of town and sleep on some other town's park bench? So it was mostly up and down the East Coast. Anything out west, I usually, carpooled with people that had a car, but I've been up and down the whole East Coast to Florida a couple times, and just decided to pack a bag one day and go.
What was one of the more memorable experiences when you kind of like went off to one of these states?
Oh God, one of the most memorable experiences that's not like completely scary. I went to Roanoke, Virginia one time because I heard about this mountain that these hippies lived on, and there was like a hostel there where you could stay for free, and it was this really cool place. And the guy that wanted to go there with me, I didn't know him very well, so I decided to test his loyalty and his, trustworthiness by packing my backpack, but leaving important things out, telling him that I had to go say goodbye to a friend up the street, and leaving the backpack there with him. But instead of going up to the street to visit my friend, I just walked up the street a little bit, hid behind a bush, and waited to see what he would do. And sure enough, there he is, going through my backpack. So I came back. I was like, I'm going to grab my bag and go visit with her for a little bit, and I'll meet up with you back here a little bit later. So he's like, okay, and I hadn't left anything good for him to steal, so he hadn't taken anything. So he left, and then I just left and went to Virginia by myself. He knew where the place was. I didn't. And he had given me a phone number to call. But when I finally got down there, the phone number that I called was disconnected, or he'd given me the wrong number or something. So I was in Roanoke, Virginia, which is a really rough area, very segregated, at least at that time. It probably still is. And so I could see the mountain. I decided to walk over there. But in between myself and the mountain was like a pretty big ghetto. And as much as, as much hardship as I experienced early in life, I had not seen, rows and rows of row houses, and there were crack addicts, and, everybody was black. Nobody there was, I'd never seen a place where everybody was black. Nobody would talk to me. Nobody would give me directions. People told me to keep moving. Don't come up on their lawn, because if I get kidnapped and killed, they don't want to be questioned by the police. There weren't even any police in the area. There was It was a very bad part of Roanoke, Virginia. And so I saw a church at the top of the hill, and coming from my, Catholic background, I'm like, sanctuary. So I started walking toward the church, and people were like pulling over and telling me to get into their car, like guys that looked real sketchy. And I was like, no, 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 no. And then finally, the church was so far away. I was like, somebody's going to kill me. I'm getting into the next car that stops and asks me if I need a ride. So I did. And it turned out to be two guys from the church. They were like with, some kind of church outreach group. And they're like, what the hell are you doing here? They told me about how bad the neighborhood is. They're like, cops don't even come down here. It's that bad. And you're like, little 16-year-old white girl. Not, you're lucky it was us. And I was like, yes I am. So they weren't going to let me, they weren't just going to drop me off anywhere. They're like, well, if you're a runaway, we need to report you. And if you're under 18, they throw you in jail for 10 days for just being out after dark until your parents come get you. I hadn't talked to my parents in like a year. So I just lied to them. I told them I was 18. I told them, even though I had previously told them I was from Connecticut, they didn't really know where Connecticut was. So I was like, just drop me off at a phone booth. So they brought me back, actually, to the Walmart where I had originally made the phone call to the wrong number. Pretended to be on the phone, told them that my friends were coming for me, and, they left me there. So that was a pretty big adventure. But there's a lot of other stories. I went fishing with some people from Brooklyn, New York, in the Brooklyn River, and caught carp with tin cans that were entirely piercing their body. Just a lot of weird stuff. I went to Daytona Beach for. I actually saved up enough money when I was 17 to start college, and I had gotten my GED at that point. I saved up enough to go to community college for a semester, and I realized halfway through the semester that I would not be able to. It just wasn't sustainable. I couldn't get any financial aid because my parents made too much money, and I wasn't considered an independent, even though they didn't support me in any way until I was 24. So I, had a semester's worth of tuition. I continued to work, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to work, save, and go to school at the same time. It just wasn't possible. So I knew that was going to be my last semester of college for a while. So I decided to go to Florida for my spring break by hitchhiking, and I made it down there. I had some friends that lived in Florida. I had a blast. We walked on the beach all night, and then I came back up here. Spring break. That's something that I had wanted to do ever since I was little, and we'd watch on MTV. They'd have all the parties and everything. They'd be live down there. And I was just I want to do that. So it was a lot of fun hitchhiking. I wouldn't recommend it now, and I definitely went through a lot of crazy situations, people trying to take advantage of me, somehow was very fortunate to not be, mistreated in any way, but I can't imagine what it would be like now, and I doubt anybody would pick up a 16-year-old girl on the highway now. It's different society.
What was during this time period, what would you say was kind of your best day, and what was your worst day?
During that time period, what was my best day? After quitting drinking, even when I was drinking, I was pretty, outwardly an upbeat person. I was even able to fool myself that I was pretty much happy all the time. I'd say just about every day was a good day. I was happy to be around my friends, and just not having my parents constantly yell at me and all sorts of crazy stuff going on at home. It really, I had the freedom that I wanted. So that made just about every day a good day. A bad day was when I was very, very hungry and very, very cold. Anytime that I just wasn't able to have enough money to get something to eat, or I was stuck outside because, whatever, I had friends that had apartments, and, it was too crazy at their house. I decided to try to go somewhere else to sleep, and nobody was there, or something like that. I'm stuck outside, and I don't know where to go, and I'm cold and hungry. that's pretty miserable. Pretty bad day. But, then tomorrow would be another day.
Were there like, did you like really realize the importance of food and like essentials during this time period?
Yeah, and that has never ever changed. I mean, I stockpile food now. You will not find me with an empty fridge. And also, you won't find me with any hungry friends either. Anybody's too lazy to cook. If my neighbors, are hungry, if they say that smells good, they've got a bowl of food. I mean, I'm all about making sure everybody has enough to eat, because that is some excruciating pain when you haven't eaten. I mean, you can't think of anything else. So I'm very big on food. I love to cook. I like to think I'm a pretty good cook, and food like brings me so much happiness now. I don't think there's any other way that I could have realized how wonderful food is. I'm surprised I'm not like really fat.
You're not. You do a good job processing it. I think it's because you're so busy all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that, would you consider that as one of the what are some of the epiphanies you kind of realized during this time period that you still incorporate in your life today?
Well, I always say that I think the most important thing that came out of my parents' relationship and my relationship is, if I ever have kids, and I'm not having kids until I'm ready to have kids, and I know that I can take care of them. I know how I would treat them, and I'm never gonna forget how it felt to be yelled at and belittled, and made to feel helpless. That will never go away for me. And then to not look down on homeless people. You don't know what their story is. I mean, generally, you don't want to feel pity for a homeless person when you pass them. And actually, in the past, there's been homeless people that I've yelled at. There's been young kids when I got to be older and was a little more successful. I've seen teenage boys panhandling. That's one thing I never did when I was homeless. I never stood there with a sign and said, "I'm homeless, help me," or anything like that. I would go, I would find work. I mean, not everybody can do that, but when you're young, and I see, young people that, don't look like they're having, they don't look like they're overly alcoholic or overly anything, physically inhibiting them from getting a job or finding some kind of daily work or something like that. I'd get out of the car and yell at them and say, "Why are you doing this?" And try to give them some phone numbers of people that I know that might hire them, and try to light a fire under them, because I was there before, and I knew that if I had given up and just started asking for handouts, it would have demoralized me to the point where I wouldn't be able to get back up eventually. So definitely don't make fun of homeless people.
I realized during the Correspond incident where we saw that guy.
Huh?
Remember Correspond?
Yeah. Woo! Yeah, he was scary. I was a scary guy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm glad I didn't see him when I got lost. I think that would have been like, no.
Yeah, that and the squirrel tail. I never skinned squirrels and ate them either while I was homeless. Fish. I'd eat fish, but no, not squirrels.
Were there any tricks you learned when you're homeless that, benefit you today, like to get food or anything like that?
Well,
bargain deals.
I had some friends that would go to a restaurant, like a McDonald's or something. They'd grab an empty McDonald's bag. They'd go in and slam it down on the counter and just start yelling incomprehensibly about how their meal was all wrong. And generally, when you do that, they'll send you out with like a whole bunch of food, like food for a family of 6. And I had friends that were really good at that. I think if I had to, I could pull something like that off, but it takes quite a bit of the guy could have been an actor. Go to LA. Take that with you. He wasn't homeless. He just liked free food. But so yeah, there's that. But I mean, tricks. I really know how to pack. I can pack in a small bag. I know how to stay warm if it's cold. What other skills did I develop when I was homeless? I know how to talk to crazy people really, really well. I can, because when you're homeless, you meet other homeless people, and some of those homeless people are crazy. So I'm pretty good at talking to people that are pretty wild and having some good conversations with them. I think it's a skill because there's people that aren't homeless that are totally crazy too, and sometimes you have to get them on your side, employers, things like that.
Great. She seemed a little off her knocker.
Yeah.
So being surrounded by people with different ideals, kind of crazy people, do you think that kind of affected the way how you accept and view people?
Yeah, I think I enjoy, you know, diversity of people's thoughts a lot more. I think before I went through that, I was actually a pretty big snob, and I was a pretty intolerant person, and I would say some awful things about people. I was a pretty bitter, ignorant person. And after meeting people that, didn't have very much money, because like I say, even though my dad was an alcoholic, I came from a, upper middle class family. That instilled in me an innate hatred for people that had anything less than we did, because I don't know, fear, I would imagine, afraid of what you don't know. And when I was homeless, I encountered, so many different people, most of whom had very little to no money, very large families, and, very, just very disadvantaged people. And that showed me, like, they were some of the most wonderful, remarkable, sweet people on earth, and that changed me radically. It definitely made me always look for the good in people, and not to just base my judgments of people on who they are and what they do, and how they live. How they live if you live like, a very mean person. But, if you happen to live in a one-room apartment, or have nowhere to live at all, I'm not going to judge somebody's character based on that,
Trying to say you gained a positive outlook. You were more accepting. But were there any times where you were very scared or fearful of some of the crazy people you were surrounded by?
I'd say if I was scared, that was just motivation to really try to, find my own way out of a situation. I remember I was hitchhiking one time, and this guy, he was like, he's kind of hitting on me, and he was like, "You look just like Uma Thurman," and I'm like, "Let me out of the car." Let me out of the, and he wouldn't let me out of the car, so I had to kind of get him talking, and then convince him that I had to go to the bathroom really bad, and because we had talked and he trusted me a little more, he stopped the car, got out, and ran. So, talking to crazy people. What was exactly the question again?
It's just have there ever been any incidents
scary moments?
Scary moments with some of the people whose mindset
correspond. That was really scary because all you guys were out there, and I had to protect you guys, and it was my idea to play hooky for a little while and go swimming, and now we have crazy squirrel skinning guy out there giving us dirty looks. So
yeah,
that was probably more scary than anything else, because it wasn't just me, it was other people that I was in charge of, or in charge of keeping safe.
Yeah, so did you, were there any, you had a various amounts of employment. Did you ever encounter these crazy people in your employment days during the various jobs you had, and did they really...
Overwhelmingly, I met a lot of really good people. Most of the people that I met that were totally crazy were, the owners, I've had business owners do awful things to me. This one guy, he made me the manager of his nursery. I grew his business for a while. He was a little crazy, but it wasn't anything I wasn't used to. I was 21 at the time, and he put me in charge of most of his business. After a while, his fiance decided that she didn't like me, so he's like, "Oh, I have to lay you off." But in order to keep me close by the nursery, so that anything should happen, another employee doesn't show up for work, he actually rented an apartment to me next door. I made the mistake of not getting any of the receipts for my rent. So basically, after his fiance decided she didn't like me and he laid me off, he waited another month. I had gotten another job, was paying him the rent. He showed up, knowing that he hadn't given me any receipts, and said, "I'm evicting you. You haven't paid the rent since you moved in," which was a year. and there was nothing I could do about it. I didn't have any receipts, so he was able to evict me and say that I owed him, an enormous amount of money, which, was very, he's crazy, and, kind of definitely made me lose trust in people that have power over me. I'm very, I'm always looking for, making sure that I'm covering myself. It's like I never let a landlord take any money from me without giving me a receipt from that point on. And it's the same thing with employers. I mean, employers, you have to give them 2 weeks notice, but they can just throw you out the door whenever they want. I'm very wary. I always have a backup plan, and, I'm always thinking about the future.
So, did your trust in people kind of like fade? Even though I get the overall impression that your trust did not fade, and your optimism and hope for the future kind of overtook this kind of mistrust of people you had.
Yeah, I'd say the majority of people are very good people, and they would do, go above and beyond to help people, make a lot of sacrifices. But I think, power and money corrupt people after a while. Just from my own personal experience, that what kind of a brat I was when I was younger, not necessarily like a bratty kid, but just, kind of a snob. That experience, I remember that, and I know how, previous employers have treated me, and, seeing that that's not the majority of people. But it really, it's the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. It means that I have to keep thinking about the future. I have to cover my own, but I have to make sure that, whatever happens, I'm able to somehow take control of the situation. So while it didn't disillusion me too much, it made me a more careful person.
So, are there any like decisions or choices you regretted, and like why?
Regrets. Well, I've regretted dating a couple guys that I've dated, or at least not breaking up with them sooner. Yeah, I think, I was an emotionally needy person. I was willing to put up with a lot more crap than I should have. So I do kind of regret that in some ways, but also, there's so many things in life that you can learn from. So I think as long as I learn from that and I don't repeat my mistakes, then I can't regret them. I regret spending 12 years as a painter. Even though the opportunity for me to go back to school didn't really jump out at me until I was 28.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should have tried harder to get into school. I should have fought a lot harder, but I didn't have time, and part of me just didn't believe that I could do it. It wasn't until like a chain of events occurred that enabled me to go, that I actually did it, and then realized how easy it was. I just wish I had been stronger and fought harder to get back to school.
It's raining, huh? We'll just go inside.
Okay. Do you pause it, or do you just...
We can just take it with us.
Okay,
it's not a problem. Yeah. Thanks. I'll just dispose of this.
So, what do you think? I'm crazy now?
No. You're doing a great job. You're going to give me so much to work with.
I hope it doesn't ruin the parade thing.
Well, we can just go right here, I guess.
Wait, is it next to you? Or?
Yeah, sure. That works.
Yeah, I'll put that there. Okay. We're back.
Yep, we're back. Yep.
Yeah, I think you were right. I don't think I've been as open about my past as far as like shouting.
Yeah, that's why I realized. So, you're more comfortable outside.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. Cool. I mean, most of the questions I have left, they're not that personal. So, what inspired you to go back to school, and how did you get on that process, and what was your eventual path in school?
It was a personal crisis.
I had pretty much gotten to the top of my field. I was making almost as much money as I could possibly make as an unskilled worker, as a painter. And I loved, I loved my job and I hated my job. I felt like I was going to be stuck doing that for the rest of my life. So in that way, I hated it, but I loved it because I was working on historical properties. I was learning a lot. It was kind of a respectable trade to have. And then I lost my job. The economy took a downturn in 2007, 2008, 2009, and they held on to me for as long as they could, but I was being paid way too much for what the kind of business they were getting. They were getting business that wasn't as you didn't need somebody as skilled as me to do the work that they were being offered. So they had let me go, and that was I didn't know what to do. I mean, I'd gotten accustomed to living a lifestyle that job afforded me, and I knew that if I were to try to get another job, I would only be paid maybe a fraction of that amount of money. So, I openly left. It was awful, but just like any other point in my life, I was like, start over. We can figure something out, and so I started kind of working in the yard, gardening. My neighbors got to know me really well. And one of my neighbors came up to me. He's like, you're unemployed. He's like, you can go back to school. There's special financial aid for people that are unemployed, so they can retrain. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. I guess I'll check it out. And I was working for my landlord too to help pay the rent. So I was working on other properties of his. And after doing that, I went down to the URI open house, and they were like, yeah, we can do this. We'll set you up with a financial aid package, and you can get the tuition waiver. And all of a sudden, I was in school. So it wasn't like I was like, I need to go back to school. I mean, my neighbor just kind of gave me a tip, and I followed up on it and started taking classes shortly after.
Hold on one second. I just realized I forgot something outside.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to go get
Somebody in the drive-thru just told me.
Oh,
Sorry to
yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Total fail.
I do stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, no, I think it's because you're so busy and you're so, you're focusing on one thing. You're just kind of
yeah.
So you got that kind of initiative and you got that.
Yeah, once I actually started taking classes, I just, I was ecstatic. I mean, I would skip on my way from the parking garage to school. I was so happy, especially once I started going and I'm getting straight A's again. It felt so good. And I mean, it wasn't for anybody but me. I was single at the time, I was accomplishing for me, and it felt so good.
So, life was different for you when you started to go back to school than times when you were working.
Yeah, I was able to have dreams again. I didn't feel like, this is it for the rest of my life. I'm going to be doing something that I only like a little bit. I felt like, maybe I can be a biologist. Maybe if I can't be a biologist, I can at least, spend time studying to be a biologist, which is just as much fun. It was definitely, the light went back into my eyes. I mean, I had a lot of other things that inspired me, and, things that I look forward to in life, maybe getting married, having a family, but I didn't think having higher education, and now possibly even getting my master's degree was something, that I could consider a reality. I'd given up on that. So having that given back to me was just, really, still is.
So you're about to go to master's school, right?
I have another year of until I graduate and get my undergrad degree. But I've already been doing some exploratory kind of research into the possibility of me getting a research or teaching assistantship so that I can afford graduate school. And it looks fairly likely that I'll be able to do it with my grades and with the the extracurricular things that I've been doing. and meeting professors, talking to them, becoming a friend, maybe. But it's something that I plan on going for.
What grad schools are you looking at?
URI and Brown. But probably URI, but I've got to try Brown because
I can see you at Brown.
Yeah, the research assistantship pays like twice as much.
Yeah, I mean Brown is a lot easier to get into for well, it's not a lot easier, but there's a lot more stress and difficulty getting into undergrad rather than grad Brown.
Yeah.
And
well, it's more like who you know as well.
That's
so
true.
I plan on doing some professor stalking.
I definitely see that drive, and you're smart enough, so
hopefully I can make friends.
Yeah, I think there's a plethora of people at Brown, but I think you're very open to people, so I think it would be.
I hope so.
Yeah,
and it's closer to where I live. So it'd be nice. So check out Brown, but there's only 15 positions open in the program that I want to get into. So okay, and I still have the rest of my junior year and my senior year to get through without, totally killing my GPA. So, but it's a goal, which is something I'm gonna try to do.
How did school in any way going back change your mindset? Like I know it made you happy, but what were some major things epiphanies or things that really stood out to you when you were attending school?
Well, things that stood out. I mean, beyond being happy, the fact that it was possible and the fact that I was actually doing it and kind of good at it made me, turn to all of my friends and say, hey, you've got to try this, because they were all kind of in the same rut that I was in. And it really made me encourage them, trying to say this is possible. Also, it opened up my eyes to a lot of opportunities to volunteer, to get involved in, things that interested me, but on a deeper level. Like, I love to go hiking, but I hate invasive species. So I ended up, being able to do the research fellowship with you guys, getting rid of invasive species, which is, I didn't know, I'd never even heard of the Natural History Survey. I'd never, it opened up my eyes to the scientific community, the conservation community, and it helped me to meet those people. Are you okay?
Yeah, I was about to sneeze, but I just
blocked it. I think that was like a really huge thing, like being introduced to the community and body of environmentalists and researchers in Rhode Island.
So where are you at in your life right now?
Well, I'm kind of in a somewhat limbo state. I'm definitely working towards a visible goal, which is, my bachelor's degree. But I'm also kind of spreading out and trying to figure out, what else can I fit into my schedule? Can I do research on my own? Can I volunteer and participate in some of these projects that I've learned about? How much can I learn, not just at school, but in my spare time? And, I'm really into spending time hanging out with my dog. I just met a few months ago a really great guy who, I hadn't been in a relationship in 3 years, so I'm learning how to allow somebody else in my life without, going crazy on them because they're, taking up my time, or valuable time, and, learning how to trust because he seems to be a really great guy, and I've been with some really awful guys before, so having somebody treat me really well and not being a total bum is something very new to me, so I'm trying to learn how to enjoy that. That's been a big focus lately. And, I started talking to my family again a little over a year ago. And so rebuilding trust with them, being able to talk to them about things that I wanted to talk about their past really doesn't seem like an option. You really close that chapter and they don't want to access it anymore. I think eventually it'll come out when they get to be even older. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff they want to get off their chest. there's definitely a lot of stuff I want to get off my chest. But for the time being, my mom and I I've grown up to have a lot in common with my mom. So enjoying the relationship that I have with my mom is something that I take a lot of, time and care of. That's pretty much where I'm at.
Did you, what was the worst kind of negative relationship that you had in your life, and what did you learn from that?
Like, besides with my dad?
Yeah, besides
like
your dad.
Male
Yeah.
relationship? I wouldn't say he treated me worse than anybody else, but it was the longest bad relationship. When I was 17, I met a guy that was 10 years older than me, and I was fascinated by him. He was kind of a hippie. He, was always talking about how he wants to go to California. He had all these ideas, these plans about, he's going to start this business and he's going to do this and that. And, I was an idiot. I just believed everything that he said. He turned out to be very much like my father, very verbally abusive, yelling. And we had probably about 6 good months before the tiger showed his stripes. And I stayed with him for 4 years after that. And it was one long, constant fight. He never got a job. He never had a job for the entire relationship. So from the age of 17 to 20, I basically supported him. I got apartment. He had run up bills in his name, so all the bills were in my name. I worked. He would take my whole paycheck. He would tell me what to buy. He would tell me what I could or couldn't eat. We lived in the woods for a while, which was really, I loved it. But it was a direct result of him refusing to work and spending all my hard-earned money. And he would yell at me for whatever reason to make me feel like I'm younger, I don't know anything. And very, it held me back from growing as a person a lot. And he kept me away from a lot of my friends. And, some of my friends and I never really got close again after that because, we just moved apart after, 4 years. Some people stuck by me and were especially helpful when I broke up with him, were very supportive because it was very difficult to break up after that long. It was the worst relationship that I ever had. And, while I can see him in person now and, it's okay, we can talk, but, I have no respect for him at all. And he's never, after dating me and after everybody saw what I had to go through with him, he's never been able to find a steady girlfriend since. So I feel like, go me, don't do that. Don't let anybody, make you feel like everything is your fault and use you. That was terrible.
What was the most empowering, long-lasting friendship / relationship in your life?
My friendship with my friend Heidi. She's we're like sisters. She had a very difficult childhood as well. She came from a home where her parents had divorced. She was also the oldest, and she had to get away from there. Her mom never disowned her, but her mom was pretty dysfunctional. So she and I spent a lot of time together. We've been through so much together. We've cried together, laughed together, gone places and traveled together. She's been so much fun and also, so supportive. She's a very motivated and inspiring person. Unfortunately, she had a daughter at a very young age. I love her daughter, so fortunately, but unfortunately because she is more intelligent than I am, and she never had the opportunity to go back to school. It's just too much pressure on her to be a single mom and go back to school. That to me, I wish I could somehow pull her up to where I am. But we, even though our lives are very different, we're still as close as ever. And yeah, I love her like she was my own family.
She called you during the trip, I remember.
Heidi, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, we're like goofballs together. We're like complete, got our own language.
Yeah. No, I get that. So, how are you having a child at a very young age? Did that kind of influence your views and ideals about having a child very young?
In some ways, I mean, I wanted to have a kid the same age as Isabel, you know, but you can't just go out and have a kid. And I mean, she's a little bit younger than me, so I was young. I was pretty young too, and it you know, wasn't something I would want to decide to do. But I always wish that I'd been able to have, you know, a little friend for Isabel, as well. But you know, that hasn't happened yet. But I think it's made me want to have kids. Definitely, you know, I'm like, when is this gonna happen? You know, part of me is still very, you know, I know how much responsibility it is, and I see everything that Heidi goes through, and you know, financially and otherwise, to do a good job raising Isabel. And I know that it takes patience and money and a lot of things that she probably has more of than I do. But you know, definitely Isabel's such an awesome kid that I can only hope for that to happen to me someday. So yeah, it's had a positive impact on my view of having kids, but I just, you know, wish it hadn't happened so early in her life. At least she would have been able to start school and have somebody to go off of.
So, like having kids, I'm getting the idea. Having kids is one of your future goals in life.
Yeah.
What are some of the other future goals and dreams you have? I mean, it could be the far future or just like the next 5 years.
I would like to own my own house, you know, have some property, be able to, you know, have like a nice healthy forest in my backyard, and, you know, kind of have a little bit of the things that made me happy as a child. You know, and I'd like to, I mean, they're not necessarily goals for me, but they're just goals in general. I'd like to see this country and this planet become, you know, a place that doesn't seem to be like dying, and you know, I want to make an impact that's going to make this planet a little bit more healthy, you know, so that we can stay here for a little bit longer. Those are, you know, pretty much goals. I want to get another dog. You know, maybe even like adopt a kid someday. You know, give a kid a good future. I don't know. I'd like to travel more. I've never left the country. As much hitchhiking as I did, there's oceans in between this country and where other places I'd like to go. So, but yeah, I think my biggest goal is to be able to use my degree to make, you know, the natural world around here a little bit more healthy.
What is the most proudest thing in your life?
The most what?
What is the most thing about you or in your life that you're most proud of?
Surviving, probably. Surviving. Being able to survive to the point where I can give back, where I have time and energy and money to say, like, if there's a cause that I believe in, I can contribute to it. And that feels really, you know, I would say it feels good. I guess I'm proud of it, but it really feels good. And you know, I'm proud that I was able to get here without hurting anybody. You know, that I've been able to uphold my principles and survive at the same time.
Let's see. Was there like ever a time where all your beliefs and like everything you held true and all your ideals that you feel so strongly about were ever like severely challenged?
I think they're challenged on a pretty daily basis. I mean, challenging for me to stick to them, or challenging for me to deal with the rest of the world.
I mean, you could give an example of both. I mean, that could be.
Let's see. Well, one of the things is when people that I love want something. When people that I love really want something, I want to give it to them. I want to be able to give it to them. And say, like, what I'm training to be is a biologist who's interested in conserving the environment. When I see people that are close to me that want something that requires more financial input than a career like that could give, it sometimes makes me think about choosing a career that pays a little bit better but isn't necessarily so, ethical, like bioengineering or something like that, which I'm strongly against. But sometimes when I hear my loved ones say, something that they really want to live by the water, or they really want to go to an expensive college, or they really want knee surgery or something like that, it makes me want to compromise my principles to help them. But things that challenge my principles, that make me feel like the rest of the world doesn't share my principles, or just the way this world is right now. I mean, you've got people in other countries being taken advantage of. You've got like an underclass here being taken advantage of. You've got nature being destroyed by companies that want to profit off of dumping chemicals, cutting down whole forests. There's a lot of mean stuff going on in the world, and so that really kind of makes me feel like maybe my principles are not shared by other people in the world.
So you mentioned when your loved ones kind of say they want something more in life, and you feel kind of bad because you want to provide. How does money play a role in your life and your ideals?
Well, I usually don't have too much of it. So earlier in life, it was just scrambling to have even anything that's close to being enough. Enough to eat, enough to afford the rent for another month, when I have my own apartment, enough to put gas in my car so I can get to work, It was will I have enough? Will I have enough? Now, it's still kind of will I have enough, but it's will I have enough to, donate? Will I have enough to get me gas to drive to volunteer somewhere? Will I have enough gas to go visit my friend? Or do I have enough time to babysit for my other friends? So it's still about, time, and pretty, it's not so much about the basic things. It's more about, things that I want to be able to do. I think it's still pretty important. I mean, I don't like money at all. I don't want a ton of money. I don't want a lot of money for myself. I like expensive things, but I just, it's not enough of a motivation, to like those expensive things for me to really feel like I just want a big old pile of money to spend as I please. I think, the biggest income tax I ever got, I gave about a third of it to Doctors Without Borders so that they could work in Haiti. I think I would, bless you. Thank you. I think I would feel guilty if I just had a bunch of money. Because there's so many people that don't have money.
What can you describe an idol to you, and how their philosophy has kind of contributed to your own ideals?
Like a historical figure?
Anyone, just a figure or person.
I'd say Heidi inspires me a lot. She's got a lot of patience with Isabel, and she's done a great job raising her to be really intelligent, friendly, and happy girl. So that inspires me all the time. Some people that I don't know personally, but that inspire me are John Lennon. Using his lyrical ability to reach out to people and tell them to, care about each other. Paul Farmer from Doctors Without Borders. I mean, he's a pretty selfless person that's really intelligent and is working on constructive ways to fix the world's problems. There's some, past political figures, Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King, people that are, Gandhi, very, remind me to be patient and tolerant and positive, because they were. But, yeah, I'd say I look for the good in a lot of people, and a lot of people have inspired me.
Okay. So What are your current? Is there an outlet here somewhere?
Oh, I don't know. Right behind you. Right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Do you think you can hear? They can hear?
Oh, they can hear. There's like the microphone. It's pretty good. Yeah,
It's right here.
No. Thanks.
So what are you're gonna play this video, or are you making a transcript
I'm
of it?
making a transcript of it, so they won't see the video. I'm gonna save it as a PDF that I actually recorded it. So I mean, I'll just be typing everything.
Think you get an A?
Oh no, actually I will, because I'm really happy. A problem a lot of people are having is a lot of people don't feel comfortable about talking about their lives. And
As long as, I'm not going to walk into Mr. Run's classroom and people will be like, hey, when are you going to Virginia again?
No, the thing is really, we're not sharing this with the class, it's just for the teachers.
Oh, really? Wow.
She's really good about that kind of stuff, so no one's going to find out about that. Trust me.
Like, when are you going to Virginia again?
Oh, Mr. Wren, he's quite character.
You know you put in that email, I like that picture of you and Mr. Wren.
What are you
talking about?
What? Wait.
Mr. Wren and I are not that close.
I think I meant Ren. Oh, God.
You know. Oh, my God.
He does kind of look like Mr. Wren, though.
No, he doesn't. Oh, my God. Much more muscular.
Oh, Mr. Wren. Seems very hippie-like when he was younger.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
He's really cool.
He's probably one of the most favorite. One of the teachers at the high school who can actually teach.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
he's like pretty on top of his students too.
No, he pretty much teaches, and I think that was pretty much the only decent teacher I've had in the past 4 years, which says a lot.
He's really cool.
Yeah. So I can't believe I put Mr. Wren. That's pretty funny.
I was like, no, that's not Mr. Wren. That's like she must have meant fun.
Wow, that makes me trip out. What?
It would be funny if it was.
Yeah.
Getting on with the biology teacher.
That would make me trip out really badly.
A fiasco and a half.
Yeah, I guess so. It would be kind of.
I don't swing to the married men spectrum of.
Well, if he wasn't married, that would be still kind of funny.
No. Sorry. Sorry to, as Son said, sorry to crush your dreams.
Oh my gosh, like Andrew did that stuff like I can't do the German accent like that.
Hello, sweetie.
Yeah.
So
funny.
Oh my god.
What was I thinking? Hold on. Had like a total brain freeze. How would you? I have to like improvise that questions. So
okay.
Yeah. What is the how would you describe your current living conditions and how are they different from when you were homeless?
Well, I have an apartment. It's very small. I've had huge apartments. Because I'm in school, I have, to watch my budget. It's a very cheap place. It's $5.25 with everything included. It's in Central Falls, but it's a converted Victorian. I've got crown molding. I've got a fireplace. I've got hardwood floors. For being small, it makes up for that in like cuteness. It is like the cutest place I've ever lived. I've got like 6-foot windows, and I've got a yard that I can do whatever I want. And it's like really great, except there's some really nutty people that live there at this point. Some guy tried moving my houseplants around the other day. I freaked out on him. There's a woman there that doesn't take her dogs outside to pee, and she's been there for about 3 months, and the place stinks, and I'm ready to lose my mind. So I've been there for 5 years. There's a pretty high overturn of people living in there because it's low-income housing, and you got people that just can't kids together there, which, some of them are my really good friends, but others are just like, they have no respect for other people and, are kind of selfish, so that makes me very angry.
So kind of like seeing like the children, the poverty, the low income, does that inspire you like more in life? And because you've experienced that, seeing that kind of poverty when you were homeless. So has that like inspired you in ways? Or
it makes me mad a little bit because I know these kids are having a hard time in life. Partially because their parents are deciding to choose drugs and alcohol over their own kids. So it makes me kind of angry at the parents. I mean, some of the people, they just aren't skilled. They haven't had much of an education, and, that's why they live there. But a lot of the people are there, because they chose drugs and alcohol, which, is not necessarily their fault, but it still really pisses me off. The kids are awesome. They come play in the yard. They play with my dog. They, swing. I've got a tree swing. So I feel like a little bit obligated to protect them some of the time. And they're really smart kids. They're all really great. They really listen. They like having people pay attention to them. They're always telling me all their stories about school and everything else that's been going on. And I love that they're outside playing outside and not cooped up inside. So, it's depressing because Central Falls is a depressing place to live. But, I definitely, I'm glad that they're out playing in my yard. They definitely brighten up.
Okay. So my last question is going to be, what is one of your most favorite memories, even now, overall in your life? Like, why is that your most favorite memory of all time?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's gonna be hard. I'd have to say, probably hanging out with Heidi and Isabel, just, whether it's like one of Isabel's birthdays or going, they live by the beach, so we'll go walking on the beach. I mean, just some of the happiest times I've had so far in my life has been hanging out with Heidi and Isabel, and, like, just having that close friendship and seeing Isabel have, like, all this, like, wonder and curiosity, and just being outside. It's just kind of like all the things in life I like so far. But I don't know. Some of the other really happy moments have been like, like watching my cousin get married and things like that. It's just, I don't know. I'm a very emotional person, so it doesn't take much to make like a moment, really. Like one of the happiest. I've had so many happiest moments in my life.
Lastly, is there anything you'd change about your life now?
Yeah, being able to provide more for the people I care about, and I would have like the power to like tell giant corporations not to drill for oil or mine in beautiful places. And I'd have some kind of magical ability to clean up the environment. Basically, anything that I change in my life would require me to have like some kind of ridiculous supernatural powers. But anything, I would probably, maybe if I could change one thing that's reasonable, I would get the suspension in my car fixed. So when I go over potholes, it's not so crazy.
Did you go over that? It's completely littered with potholes. It's so bad.
Dude, all over Island, it's crazy. So yeah, maybe I'd have a supernatural power to get rid of potholes as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm pretty content.
It's good.
What I've got going on so far.
This is gonna be a good transcript. This is gonna go really well.